All right, guys. So what we have here is right here is a DC Spotlight that apparently was free if you had a comic book shop, and what it was doing was showing you. It's a preview issue, it's showing you things that were exciting and about to happen in 1985, 50th anniversary of DC Comics, formerly National Periodical. Things that were coming, things that were going on. And I got this off of eBay for a steal because it books, actual books, at $50 or $80 because of being a first appearance of the Watchmen, if you will, if you want to consider those things, right? And as you can see, this one is signed by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, right across here. And I've met him before. I have several signatures from him, and I'm very sure that that is an actual signature. So I'm happy with that, right? So 1985, I was 12 years old. Exciting things were happening in comics. Exciting things were happening in movies. Exciting things were happening outside of my home because, I was 12. 12 is a great age. And most of my greatest memories either involve comics, movies, or all the things that happen outside with my friends and stuff and things, right? So in 1985, we had cable come across, so we had MTV going on. The biggest thing about MTV in 1985 is they had a top 10 every night that you supposedly were able to call in and vote for the top 10 videos. They'd spend an hour from 6 to 7 showing those. And it was the year of Theater of Pain by Motley Crue, an absolute trash album by a trash band, in my opinion. Sorry if there's any Crue fans out there. I've seen them in concert several times. But that's a band that the talented and great Mick Mars carries on his back. But anyway, Home Sweet Home was the song on MTV to the point that it was number one for so long they ended up having to ban it from the top 10, make people vote for another video. I was able to connect a little bit with my mom because MTV would show the Monkees TV show from the 60s that my mom had watched. Some of the big movies at the time were Back to the Future in 85. I did not see this in 1985, but I discovered Nausicaa, Studio Ghibli Nausicaa, in the Valley of the Wind or whatever. It was Warriors of the Wind, a horrible cut that you could rent, but Vampire Hunter D had come out. I recently saw somebody say that this was showing its age, and they're wrong. Goonies was my movie of the year, if you will. Just to take you back. One of the great things that I didn't see in the theater, but it was all over TBS and everywhere else there for years and years, but Better Off Dead, a great teenage movie. John Hughes had a lot of influence on these movies. Clue had come out, one of the most underrated movies that I absolutely loved, and it was the year of Stallone also with Rocky 4, and I think I'm 99% sure Rambo 2 had come out. Rambo was nuts. Also, we had Pee Wee Herman, the Pee Wee Herman movie, Tim Burton's directorial debut. Disney had the Black Cauldron that had come out that Tim Burton had worked on. A lot of people don't realize Tim Burton was an animator at Disney. He'd worked on Fox and the Hound and the Black Cauldron. And this was going on at DC, things that were coming out. In comics, this was the year that Art Adams came out with Long Shot. We got to see the debut of Art Adams. He had a 6-issue miniseries. And I'm pretty sure somewhere he got a lot of work there for a while. He did a New Mutants special that in an X-Men annual that had the mutants in Asgard, the Asgardian Wars. That's the story that actually brought me in. Secret Wars 2 was going on. Crisis on Infinite Earths was going on. Alan Moore was Eclipse Comics was getting his older stories of Miracle Man. Reprinting those, and he would eventually get the new stories and pick up on it. So there's a lot of great history going on. But there was a preview issue that if you had a comic book shop. Now, the really cool thing about 1985 is, like I said, I was 12 years old, but I'd already been into comics for 8 years. And I think I had reached a spot with my limited yard sales, flea markets, and spinner racks across town. Of course, I did a video a few years showing you 99% of the places I bought comics around town. that I'd figured out what was going on. I knew what to do. The big number one thing was I was collecting what I liked and was reading it. I was getting teen books so I could get more bang for my buck with more heroes. But thanks to 1985 and the things we're going to see in this preview issue, right when I learned all the answers, they changed the questions. And we'll see what was going on because I have only flipped through this. There was no comic book shop to where I could get this. So as you can see, they have a little article here on what's going on in Crisis on Infinite Earths. I have a newspaper clip I should have brought here, but they actually spoiled months before. They had actually spoiled Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7, where Supergirl died, in the local paper. There was an article out that was in the Bristol paper the summer of '85, and I've clipped it out and I have it. It's falling apart. I need to get it laminated. Everything you ever wanted to know about everything, but we're too confused to ask. So I guess I haven't read this, so that's why I'm saying we're just kind of looking at it. New visions, new formats. Great things were coming out. No, that is not Garth Ennis's Preacher. Joe Priest, things that I've never really heard of. Can you solve it before we do? They were doing DC Challenge, which was a fantastic series that the creators, writers and artists and creators at DC had gotten together and decided they were each going to write a book with a team picked at random. Supposedly they picked the names out of a hat. And each one would end with a cliffhanger, and the next team had to not only solve the cliffhanger, but move the story forward and end it in a cliffhanger, and it was 12 issues. It reads pretty rough, but they had a blast with it, and it's actually fun to read. It's called DC Challenge. Random characters throughout the whole thing. As you can see, it looks like they announced the teams. Lynn Wine, Chuck Patton, Doug Moench, Carmine Infantino, Paul Levitch, Gil Kane, Elliot S. Megan, W. Barr, Mike W. Barr, Dave Gibbons, Dan Jurgens, Joe Staton, Jerry Conway, Roy Thomas, Don Heck, Dan Miskin, Kurt Swan, Marv Wolfman, everybody, and George Perez. They had it all out. That was just fun. I have it in there. What we got here? Mask, Nathaniel Dusk. I have some sporadic issues of these. The Outsiders, Be Here, It'll Be Good. This ended up being Looker. We had Jim Aparo on The Outsiders, Batman and the Outsiders Forever, and they brought in Alan Davis, who would eventually leave DC and would end up going on the X-Men, different kind of books over there, Hot and Heavy, annuals and such, until he got Excalibur. But what had happened was a lot of series were going to direct market Baxter series, and their series that were on the spinner racks and stands and everywhere else ended up being reprints of those. Hex is going to have the most spellbinding, gun-wrenching adventures. They put Hex into the future, turned him more or less into Mad Max, because it was the 80s and post-apocalyptic Road Warrior stuff was the stuff. Steve Lytle had come on to the Legion, and in the Baxter series, they were doing great things there. Of course, Titans were going on. They were still huge. Alan Moore on Swamp Thing, he'd been on the book for a while, but with my memory, they ended up taking off the Comic Code Authority. They cranked up the horror, and around issue 50 in my town, Swamp Thing by Alan Moore was no longer on the stands, but you could still get your Alan Moore books if you wanted to. Of course, Watchmen was starting up, or getting ready to start up. If you didn't get those, I was reading Squadron Supreme by Mark Grunwald. But at the time, you had, For the Man Who Has Everything, that classic Alan Moore Superman annual story in one of his annuals. There's been adaptations of it in a Justice League cartoon, and the Supergirl series actually tried to pattern it for Supergirl. Mega Men were going on. More stuff on Legion. Jack Kirby's greatest strength is his imagination. Great experiments had been taken off over the years, where they kind of kept coming back in miniseries or maxi series, and I think she got an ongoing series finally with Amethyst. Of course, how can you not talk about Jack Kirby in anything? Looks like this is from Superpowers. I didn't realize that was in 1985. And of course, there was this strange thing. This strange ad was popping up in the DC Comics. You didn't quite get it. You got to understand this is 1985. A prestige format book was not anything your general audience was really aware of what it was. But Frank Miller was coming in, and thanks to Jeanette Kahn allowing creators to create, she did. Jeanette Kahn was the publisher at DC for quite a while. She came in on this in the 70s, completely helped reform DC into a more well, a bigger company. Let's just put it that way. There's a whole story about Jeanette Kahn. I don't want to get off there, but she was allowing people like Alan Moore and Frank Miller and other people to come in there and just create. And we were getting hints of this weird book that you could order and get 4 issues of by Frank Miller that was sort of vague. And as you can see, the art was completely different. Batman had a new look, and a lot of people were like, well, they just put it in the Batman comic. Great things were happening, but we did not realize we were seeing legends, if you will. Okay, so that there was coming on. Justice League Detroit was going on hot and heavy, with Aquaman and stuff. And this is number one why the book has taken off. We got our first look at the Watchmen. We didn't know what was coming. It wasn't set in the universe. Now, Watchmen did not take off as soon as it came out. Word of this book as it came out, and a few people were collecting it. Word of mouth got around. More and more people were wanting it. The way I remember it, Watchmen really took off probably about a year later, and it was one of the first books that were put into trade that helped a trade market start coming out. I still have a trade that I acquired in 1988, but it was really fast. It's really fascinating as many times as over the last, what is that, 34 years now, is that right? 33 years of reading Watchmen, to go back and see this loose and rough concept art here, I guess, that they put out for this promotional piece. The colors are different. The red and blue goggles or whatever that is on the comedian didn't make it into the book. Rorschach's costume ended up being recolored. Dr. Manhattan got a more crisp look, if you will. But you just kind of looked at this and you just knew the name Alan Moore and you didn't know what was coming. So thank goodness that in the actual book, the art was a bit more refined and crisp in here. You can already see the secondary colors sort of bleeding through. That's what's standing out to me. Watchmen, with the colors, they went with a palette of secondary colors, and it's kind of weird to see prime colors in here. The red, blue, yellow, really standing out. The green on her costume, that's very strange. So anyway, that's it. And then of course we had some editorial inside. A little history on DC, it looks like. And these were things that were coming in 1985 were going on that you could get at your comic book shop to let you know what was coming. 85 was a fun year. Especially when you're 12. It was a bit frustrating to run into people maybe in the high school that were still collecting books, or people who had access to driving what felt like a world away. And like I said, at the time I'd already been into comics since 1977, since I was 4. So that doesn't really sound like a long time, 8 years, but you also have to understand, I want you to think back when you were a kid and realize time psychologically moved a lot slower. So that was pretty much a couple lifetimes is what it felt like. George Perez was just hitting on all cylinders during this year. I always loved seeing George Perez draw Kirby characters, which he had Commandy and Crisis on Infinite Earths #2. Great things were coming. This costume by Aquaman, it seems like this got used a year or two later in a Aquaman miniseries. So it's kind of fascinating to see that it was already in the works. And to see the Outsiders kind of being pushed right up front there. I guess, when you get a Baxter series, you're expected to be a star. And of course, Nathaniel Dusk ended up getting revisited in Doomsday Clock a few years ago. So these characters have sort of survived. Blue Devil, Amethyst. Anyway, just a neat little time capsule I wanted to look at. All right, guys, be excellent to each other. Catch you later.